Today, our first speaker is Marilinda Garcia. She is great. We've been talking in the back. Just to start out, she was first elected to the New Hampshire House of Representatives in 2006 at age 23 and served 4 terms. In 2004, she won the Republican nomination for New Hampshire's 2nd Congressional District. During her time in elected office, Marilinda focused on economic development, transparency, and regulatory reform in healthcare. Garcia earned her BA from Tufts University in 2006 and concurrently completed her BM with academic honors and distinctions in performance from the New England Conservatory of Music. In 2010, she graduated from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, where she received a master's in public policy. Garcia served 3 years as a court-appointed special advocate for abused and neglected children, and was an adjunct faculty professor at Phillips Exeter Academy and St. Paul's School in New Hampshire, and at Gordon College in Wenham, Massachusetts. She also received many distinctions, including being named the RNC Rising Star, placement in the New Hampshire Union Leaders 40 Under 40 Honors Program, and winning the National Foundation for Women's Legislators Integrative Healthcare Pioneer Award, and winning the Hildegard Burhans Foundation Young Artist Humanitarian Award. Her media profile includes appearances on Fox and Friends, CNN's Anderson Cooper 360, Roll Call, NBC Latino Infusion, and Fox News Latino, among many others. Now give a warm welcome to Marilinda Garcia.
Good morning, everyone. The music was very exciting back there, so I hope I can keep the energy up. You heard a little bit about me, and I, of course, want to talk more about that, tell you my story, tell you what motivates me and the path that's brought me here today. But to kick this off, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what I'm doing right now. I'm the national spokesperson for the Libre Initiative. And that's an organization that through education and advocacy, both in Hispanic communities in states across the U.S., as well as on the federal level when it comes to monitoring and advocating for and against, if you will, policy initiatives. Our goal is to always be working in preservation of the free society that has made America the country it is today. So, before I go any further, I wanted to show you 2 brief videos about our organization and what we care about. So that's a remarkable thing. So I'm really happy to be working with the Libre Initiative now, because we want to educate the Hispanic community and advocate for the Hispanic community about all of these values that contribute to a free society. And I know you're all probably very fluent in what those values are, economic opportunity, freedom of speech and religion, individual liberty, personal responsibility, all of those good things that together have made this country something amazing and something worth preserving. So I want to talk to you today about this and why it's relevant to you in a very significant way. And firstly, it's that you are in fact the key to the preservation and success of this free society, which, by the way, is not a society without its challenges, right? We all know that. But you need to be involved in many ways. Yes, you need to be involved in the political process. You need to be involved in entrepreneurial activities. But I also want to encourage you in all of the potential roles that come your way and challenges you take on. I want to encourage you to assume positions of leadership. In other words, don't expect that you necessarily need doubt yourself, even though we all will have doubts at some time, but naturally try to assume positions of leadership. And I want to talk about what that means, mostly in view of my experience, which of course has been in public policy and elected office, but also in terms of your reality as young people in this country. So to be clear, Um, Leadership doesn't always mean having the next big idea or, having that idea or thing that nobody else has thought of and that you came up with and, now everyone's going to join your team and go forward with it. It doesn't necessarily mean you're the one to start an organization of one particular kind or another. And it doesn't also always mean that you have to be a leader, you have to run for a particular office or have, for example, the biggest office in an organization. Though, as I'll tell you in a minute, that's definitely part of it, and I encourage you to perhaps run for office someday. But it's also really leadership in its essence. It's about motivating other people through your actions to do something that they might not ordinarily do. And it's sometimes as simple as being educated about an issue or cause and conversing about it with someone, though it's easier sometimes to stay quiet. It's also involves encouraging those that are needlessly tentative about taking on a new challenge. You can be that person to encourage them to move forward, and that is leadership in a way as well. Or it could be through your various involvements and interests, being a catalyst for your generation's engagement in civic governance and our electoral process, which I believe all of you do have a really great foundational understanding of and care about deeply. But so I remember back in 2010, Bill Gates, I'm sure you've all heard of, came to speak at Harvard, and when I was attending graduate school there. And as you know, he's doing a lot of philanthropic work with far-reaching impact through his foundation across the world, mostly, well, not mostly, but in international development. He's working on bringing single-handedly almost the rate of malaria down by, he has an initiative that's something pretty simple. It's mosquito netting, right? But that alone has proved very effective at reducing the rates of malaria that afflict people mostly in Africa. But he's always just constantly seeking ways to expand and do more in an intelligent, focused way, an efficient way. And in that speech, when he was speaking, he told us that his goal all along is to answer the question, why aren't the brightest minds working on solving the world's biggest problems? And he had an anecdote. He said he was at a dinner party where he was at this table, of extremely powerful and intelligent people, movers and shakers in the world, right? And he said he couldn't help but be incredulous as he would listen, kind of the chatter and, see what people were chatting about through the course of the dinner. He said all of these people for hours only managed to talk about their March Madness brackets and the stock market. Now, maybe Bill Gates is one of those that really has an edge in these things, and maybe he just needs to chill out and accept that people maybe want to have a good time at dinner. But anyway, but to him it was a shame. He said all of this power, all of this intelligence, all this money was sitting around and talking about basketball. They didn't use this time that they had together, all these great minds and power. They didn't use this time to try to figure out the solution to some of the challenges that our world and society face. And so, I can understand why he had that concern, and I just want to shift that a minute to think about your generation and my generation, because we can be viewed in a very similar way, right? Collectively, we have a lot of energy. We have a lot of interest in so many things, enthusiasm, creativity. And really, yes, there's a lot going on in life. There's so many distractions, so many things that we choose to lend our time and attention to. But all of that energy should really be applied, or we should make an effort, I guess is what I'm saying, to apply our time and talent to an important cause or stepping up as a leader in some way in our community or for our generation. And this is quite serious, and I want you to think about it seriously and resolve maybe to do it, or at least think about this question. If anyone has a reason to be concerned about the future of our country, it's you guys and me, but let's say you guys. Okay, so again, if anyone has a reason to be concerned about the future of our country, it's all of you. You need to be cognizant of this fact, and I'm sure you are. There are many paradigm shifts occurring in our country at present, many in ways that will affect you directly, even though they may seem a little bit existential. So, a perfect example is this question: what is the American dream? Right? We just heard this video. We all, I think, understand, at least in an ephemeral sense, what it is, right? It's the land of opportunity. It's a place where everyone can make it. It's where we can live our dreams, etc. But there was a time, to go a little more concrete about this, when that question instantly inspired that answer, okay? It was, the components were, right, graduate from college, get a great job, become a homeowner. Whereas now, honestly, if you think about it a little more deeply, those qualifiers don't necessarily apply. Let's just look at, okay, fine, there's the recent ups and downs of the employment rate, the job market, the housing market, and all of these things that we've placed our sense of security in, our professional lives, our home lives. Frankly, these days, following your dreams almost seems like an unwise sacrifice for job security. And it's recently been called into question what exactly the definition of a good job is, right? Is it a big paycheck? Is it finding something that's mission-driven? Is it acquiring that perfect work-life balance? Then, of course, what about the concept and value of education at all? Okay, this is a question that comes up a lot now, and you're in the middle of it all with the range of, span of educational points you're at right now. I know there's, an age range here. So the New York Times recently published a piece, and it was titled, "What is the Point of College?" The Wall Street Journal recently reported that the class of 2015, so last year, was the most indebted class ever, wherein 71% of graduates took out loans to finance their secondary education and now face paying back approximately $35,000 worth of debt on average. So that's a lot of debt for anyone to have, never mind before even starting a first job out of college. Ideally, the thought of school entails limitless opportunities to expand educational horizons and learn new subjects, as well as things of basic importance like learning how to read, right? All told, school should represent a life-enriching educational journey from first grade all the way to college, the completion of which making each young adult smarter and ready to reap the benefits of better employment opportunities and higher earning potential. I'm quoting the New York Times here. So why is it then that in America currently, the words school and college in particular most quickly bring to mind endless years of crippling debt, a feeling of stress, and a general skepticism if it's all worth it? Deep down, everyone knows higher educational attainment is a worthwhile venture for both personal and intellectual development and career success. But for more and more Americans, it's increasingly a worry that begs a cost-benefit analysis. And that's very true. I think we all know higher education is extremely important. It's the pathway to success and social mobility and all of these things. But right now we're at a point where all the options need to be considered. Not everyone necessarily needs to go to a four-year liberal arts degree. Maybe you have a particular trade or a particular profession, or you want to, get your start in a family business or an apprenticeship or as an intern in a particular industry. And there are a lot of different ways to go about it, and these are very, serious questions. And of course, all of that's motivated by the big problem, which is the student debt crisis. And it's only getting worse, unfortunately, and it doesn't seem as though a lot of our elected officials necessarily have an idea of what to do about it, or frankly have the will, let's say, to do what they should do about it. So that's just one example of something that's changing, the way we think about education, the way we think about the value of education and the purpose of education. That's a big one, and that's shifting right in front of our eyes. And I apologize for going to such a dark place. I'm now thinking, how much debt do I have left? I was in school for 7 years. Yes, I'm still paying it off, by the way, but the light at the end of the tunnel is there. And anyway, and it was worth it for me. And I hope you're all enjoying what you're doing and finding your educational paths of value to you. But in the middle of it all, right? We're all in the middle of it all still. Your present reality is a result of the decisions of previous generations of leaders. It's things that people that have come before us, the decisions they've made, for better or worse. And our future will also continue to be decided by others unless we decide to engage and take an active role in shaping it. And that's the reality. So you can either let other people make decisions for you and about the trajectory of your country and your life, and that's from the federal level right down to the state level, or you can be an active participant in shaping our country's trajectory. And there are a lot of different ways you can do that. But so we talked about the student loan and cost of higher education issue, and you've all heard about a number of other ones, right? So there's all kinds of studies and analyses coming out all the time, which frankly are not very heartening, but there's a recent one, right, was the federal government's improper payment problem, okay? Meaning they paid out reimbursements, be it to, Medicare, Medicaid, different agencies, whatever the case may be, that improper payments, though, it's extremely pervasive and persistent. It reached $137 billion in 2015, which is a new record. Okay, that's improper payment, meaning money that ought not to have gone where it went. So that's a big problem. And that, of course, leads to the other issue, which is a trust in the government's ability to solve these problems, because frankly, again, not a great track record. Then there's, of course, the effectiveness, dubious effectiveness and sustainability of our nation's entitlement programs, things that, again, we are all paying into and frankly may find they'll be insolvent by the time we're old enough to reap the benefits, if you will, of them. We all know that the primary cause of our national debt, as you saw, is about $160,000 per family in this country, is the steady, decades-long rise in entitlement spending, right? Medicare and Medicaid mentioned those. And in the past 75 years in this country, we have built a vast and sprawling network, which is only getting more vast and more sprawling, of social welfare protections and programs. But again, this is all facing insolvency unless the right decisions are made. Then there's this issue of bureaucratic layering, right? So American businesses, this is a good thing, American businesses have become leaner in recent decades with fewer layers of management, right? So they're always finding ways to streamline, find efficiencies, et cetera. But by contrast, an NYU study found that the number of management layers in federal government agencies has increased substantially. So that is not good news. Because if I've learned one thing from my time in the state legislature for about 8 years, it's that it's extremely hard. Once something's in place, once you grow a program or an agency, it only gets bigger, it only gets more complicated, and once it's there, it just tends to grow. The tentacles kind of keep expanding and touching on other things, and it's almost impossible to scale it back. So it always grows. And then there was a point of really bright news, at least for our community, in that a recent Pew analysis showed that Latinos, as a group, have become considerably more upbeat about our personal finances and optimistic about our financial future since the Great Recession. So with Libre, this is something that we're always seeking to, of course, build upon that, but also empower, the people that are out there looking to try to better themselves, better their family situation, start businesses, whatever the case may be. So we offer financial literacy programs, GED equivalencies, tax preparation seminars, assistance in going through the naturalization process, paperwork, how to start a business, all of these types of programs that we think and know, are helpful to our community. And that's important because as of 2012, there are approximately 2 million Hispanic-started businesses, or 2 million Hispanic-owned businesses, which is actually the highest rate in a particular demographic in the U.S. So, yeah, that's really excellent. But the challenge then is that on the government side, there's a lot of stuff that goes on kind of in a stealthy way, right? So, in other words, people don't notice. We notice these big votes, on these big ticket issues, if you will. But meanwhile, through rulemaking authority and occupational licensing, those are just two things I'll throw out there, those two things can create massive obstacles and barriers to opportunity, particularly for those that are looking to be involved in business or start a business, or take their trade or their passion or whatever it is and turn that into gainful, a way to make gainful employment. So what does that mean exactly? Who knows what I'm talking about when I'm saying rulemaking authority? We all have a sense of what, okay. So just very briefly, for example, with the Affordable Care Act, right? Something is passed, but then what happens is all the details are not filled in terms of what does this mean, to different industries and hospitals and insurance and people and all these plans. And so what happens is the agencies that have that legislation under their jurisdiction go in and write all the rules. And then you find out, we're still finding out, because things are still being written, rules are still being written about this particular law, how they affect you, the price you have to pay, what type of business is allowed or not allowed, what things you have to bring your company or hospital or, whatever it is you're doing into compliance with. And those can be very crippling. One, you could come to find out you're actually in violation of the law and committing a felony, which is never a good thing. Or you could just find that the expense of the compliance that you have to bring yourself in line with and your company is extremely cost prohibitive. So rules issued in the last 7 years in this country, just rules alone, have imposed $700 billion in compliance costs, okay? And the cost of those regulations per household is approximately $15,000 if you were to spread it out. So a lot of these things, they're put out there to achieve laudable policy goals and objectives, right? They're supposed to do a good thing. But as I said, a lot of times they actually create barriers to opportunity, and it's really important to our community, for all of those reasons. There are a few, on the occupational licensing side, that tends to happen more at the state level, where a particular industry will say, you know what, and it usually happens for, to benefit the already established businesses or industries, that have been working in the state. So for example, there was a story out of, I don't remember what state, but a young lady that liked to braid hair and shampoo hair. So she started a salon. She was doing that. It was really, great for her. She was supporting her family, etc. And then all of a sudden, the authorities came by and said, you're missing this particular license to be able to shampoo hair, okay? And you're also missing the license you need to braid hair under the law. She was like, really? So then she looked into it, and come to find out she had to have this, 200 hours of training and, this particular type of certification and this particular type of license, all of which she would have to get through classes that weren't even offered anymore at the schools that people before had gotten. So she literally was put out of business, except that she rallied her community and her legislators and got those laws changed. But she was about to be put out of business over shampooing hair and braiding hair because she didn't have the particular certifications that, even if she had been able to get them, would have actually been quite expensive and maybe prevented her from starting her business to begin with. So that's just an example of the stuff that goes on, both on the federal level and the state level, but it's really important that we pay attention because those can be massive obstacles and barriers to opportunity for so many of us in our community all the way along. So being engaged and educated and aware of these things is actually the most important part of being an effective leader in something. But it can also be made manifest in, various other ways. So it doesn't, again, always mean having the biggest office and the best title. That doesn't necessarily mean that person is a leader. It does mean speaking up. It means taking action and inspiring others to follow your lead. And from what I know of you, just by virtue of you being here today, that means you're well on your way. You're already leaders in some way. You're exercising that capability and potential. So I applaud you for that. And I hope you stay in touch and engaged, with the other leaders you meet here and help each other as we go along. But I do want to tell you, and hopefully as a way of encouraging you, that I'm not going to pretend it's easy, okay? It sounds exciting and, you start to win awards and get all this recognition and, do great things and people say nice things about you when you're successful in different ways. But you do encounter a lot of daunting challenges that don't seem that way necessarily when you hear about it retroactively from others. So this is the reality. For any challenge that you look to take on and responsibility you look to take on, you may not feel at that point in time like you have the appropriate competencies at that point in time or even in the near future, right? You'll have a lot going on in your lives. You have to, again, depending on where you are, get through grad school, college, find gainful employment, figure out what you're doing with your life, etc. But I just want to encourage you that I truly believe, and I've found this to be the case, that anything to which you devote your energy, enthusiasm, and intelligence will then become an experience that helps you sort out your life and chart your path as you go along. And you're going to be able to draw so much from everything that you've challenged yourself with and every experience, even if it seems menial, even if it was just some sort of part-time job to, pay the bills one way or another, or, time you spent helping out with a family issue or something like that. All of those things will develop you as a person and as a leader. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my story, as you heard. So I started off my career, if you will. I wanted to be an orchestral harpist, actually. But I had a lot of academic interest too, so I ended up pursuing a joint degree in college. But my goal was to be a harpist, and I liked playing with orchestras, and I did that for a number of years, and it was amazing, and I got to see, I've been to approximately 30 countries, around the world. I've played in some amazing concert halls, Teatro Colón in Buenos Aires, and, in Brazil, and the Concert House in Berlin, and Teatro Marcello in Italy, and, really amazing experiences, and it was fantastic. But at a certain point in the arts, similar to in sports, it's really hard to make it, if you will. So it was great. I was enjoying what I was doing. I was then teaching for a number of years as well. But I frankly didn't have the passion to basically try to win the one position that there is allocated for harps in every major orchestra. And also, if I were to even make that audition, I'd be there with 80 of the world's other interested and accomplished harpists, and then one of us would get the position. And by the way, it could be in Ohio or Singapore. No offense to either of those places, but you can't really just pick what city you want to be in. So anyway, so I was like, you know what? I have a lot of other interests, and at the time I had some free time, and I'm a pretty busy person. I'm just always doing different stuff, and so I thought, you know what? Why don't I get involved in a campaign? And I thought, why don't I volunteer to work on a campaign for someone that would represent my values well in my home state? So I was 23 at this point, and so I was inquiring with some people. And then as I asked a friend of mine that was involved in politics in the state, because I really was not at all at that point, he said to me, why don't you consider running yourself? Now, no one had ever said that to me before. I'd never thought about it. No one in my family had been involved in politics at all, aside from voting. And so it just seemed in the realm of the impossible and the realm of, what? Again, it had never occurred to me, ever. I was not one of those that was like, since I was 5, I'm going to be president someday or something. No, I was never like that. But then I thought about it, took kind of the pragmatic approach, and I was like, well, if I'm going to make calls, knock on doors, learn the talking points, if you will, of, another candidate and working for them, why don't I just do it for myself? So I did, and I, went to Staples, and I printed out my little flyers. I said, okay, I need to tell people what I believe and why, and then, introduce myself and be sure they know when voting day is, and, let them know they should vote for me. So I knocked on thousands of doors and had a few interesting experiences, like walking across someone's freshly painted porch and leaving my shoes stuck on their stairs. That was horrible, but and then, I would get very mixed results. On the one hand, I'd have people that say, oh, that's fantastic, you're young, this is what we need, we need youth involved in politics in our country. I'll definitely vote for you, even if they didn't necessarily agree with me, by the way. And then the next door would be like, oh, you're young, what do you know? You shouldn't be doing this, So it was quite an emotional roller coaster in that respect. But I persevered, and I ended up winning a seat in the New Hampshire legislature. So then there I was. So that was exciting, but then suddenly I was like, I'm going to be in the legislature. What on earth do I have to offer in terms of experience and knowledge, about public policy? I was like, I'm a harpist, okay? Like, what, sure, I'm smart. I can read, I can study these issues. I know healthcare and education and taxes and all this, they're important, but honestly, what experience do I have to bring to the table? It didn't help, by the way, that I was 23 and the average age in the legislature at the time was 62. So my peer group was just all kinds of lopsided. But there I was, and wouldn't you know that in the New Hampshire legislature, it's a really huge, beautiful old hall, but the individual seats do not have microphones, okay, attached to the chair or the desk or what have you, as it does in some legislatures. So that means if you want to speak on a bill or make a comment or ask a question or anything, you actually have to stand up, get recognition from the speaker, sign up in advance, and go all the way to the front to this very big, imposing wooden well and address, all of your colleagues. And there's, portraits of Daniel Webster and, Franklin Pierce and all these imposing historical figures there. And it's, all live and, also recorded, and there's journalists and everything. So wouldn't you know that that was actually terrifying to a lot of my colleagues who weren't necessarily confident about their public speaking skills, which is one of the greatest fears amongst average Americans. It's always rates, I believe, as number one. For me, though, I thought talking is way easier than playing the harp. And frankly, the size of this audience is much smaller than many audiences I've played for. So I started being the one that would go up a lot. They'd, in caucus or whatever, they'd say, we need someone to speak on this issue, and, can you point out this, that, and the other about this bill? like, yeah, I can do this. So I ended up doing that a lot. And so just by taking that action, wouldn't you know, I started to accrue responsibilities and frankly become a leader, because people would turn to me and be like, oh, you did a really good job on that one. Do you want to speak on this? Or, hey, can you go talk about this? Or can you go ask this question, etc. So that was a way where a skill that I thought had absolutely nothing to do with my current responsibility as a legislator actually turned out to be something that enabled me to quickly kind of rise through the ranks and establish myself as a leader and full participant. So that's just one example. So I just want to encourage you then that everything you do in life is a learning experience and will give you a skill or provide important perspective that will be transferable to something else that you're doing later on in life. So again, that was just one example, but it actually turned out to be a big one for me and quite critical. So just in closing, I imagine, actually I know that most of you are here because you are concerned and active participants when it comes to shaping your lives and the trajectory of our country, and you are some of the best and brightest examples of what our country has to look forward to. And I know deep down that you are capable and competent and willing. But doubts can get in the way. We all have those. And other things can also get in the way and hold you back sometimes. But it's really important that you do step up and encourage others to do the same. And the great thing about that, which in closing I just want to encourage you with, it's a quote I heard, and I jotted it down, and I don't know who to attribute it to. I should harness the powers of Google, I know, and figure this out. But it's a good one I want to share with you. So it's, and as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fears, our presence automatically liberates others. So again, you, by taking action, by speaking up, by exercising leadership in all of these various ways, you're going to create a team. You're going to motivate people around you that will be inspired by your example. And then if you thought you were alone and the only one, you'll find that pretty soon you won't be, because you will be inspiring and enabling others to do so as well. So again, we live in a great country. We have a great society, but the reason we have a great society is because of our foundational values, and they are worth preserving, and I hope that all of you will do your part in helping maintain what has made our country the fantastic one it is today, and that it can continue to be so and greater in the years to come. So thank you so much for your time and attention. I don't think I have time for questions, but if I did, I would take them. But otherwise, you can find me on Twitter. Please be in touch, and thank you so much. Appreciate it.